Welcome, bank tellers, protesters, and creatures at the bottom of the well, to episode 406 of an Unearthly podcast, kicking off our 19th season and streaming live on the 21st of February 2023. This is our annual celebration of Elisabeth Sladen and Sarah Jane Smith, and we finished all of her televised stories. So tonight we start her audio adventures with Sarah Jane Smith Comeback, written by Terrence Dix and starring Elisabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I am coming to you live from Atlanta. With me are color commentator Alex Fireheart
Hello.
and technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
Stop the snow. We already had enough.
Our co-host Ron Son apparently has had his headset stolen yet again. So that's kind of annoying. People, please stop stealing headsets.
Yeah, that's pretty
Without that, he
shitty.
cannot be with us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
How's everybody's 2 weeks been?
Not too bad. Um, didn't really get up to much. I mean, I did. It's funny because I technically would have had a bunch of reviews of Shame, but I realized yesterday. Oh, I barely remember what happened in those because my mind's been elsewhere since.
No, do you happen to have scores that you could at least count as retcon scores or no?
Um, Probably, but I might leave it just in case. I
Okay,
think.
fair enough.
Or at least, well, we'll see when we get there, like how I have to remember if I had ones in mind. But yeah, like it's definitely a lot of like, I even like had to go back and look at a list to be like, oh yeah, these are the ones I watched. And it's not a matter of them not being memorable. It was just a matter of, um, it was like the day of and then the day after, I think, the podcast that I was watching some of these. And it was just like, oh, I don't remember much from these. That's a bit
Well, you can jog
troubling.
your memory and then do a 2 hour feature where
Mm.
you just give all of your thoughts on all of the episodes you've watched.
Um, I spent most of my 2 weeks getting more hours than I wanted. I believe I've already gotten at least most, if not all, my tax returns. I didn't get much this year. Apparently, I must have gone up a tier, and I hate it
Hmm.
because instead of the nearly 2,000 from last year, I've only gotten 500.
uh,
Yeah.
Fuck you, government. Get out of my money. I don't slave
Well,
away at this fucking job just for you to steal it all. God
in
damn it.
in theory, that means last year they took too much, and this year they took closer to the right amount. So in
What?
other that means so if you get less back, that means that this year they instead of taking too much money and giving it back later, they let you keep it in the first place.
No, because my checks didn't change.
Hmm.
I made the same amount per month, and they gave me less of it back, even though I was working the entire year this year.
Ah.
hmm.
Other than that, yeah, I got lots of extra work hours in. Been slowly getting through my backlog of pre-recorded streams to make videos. I believe I've mentioned before that all my like gaming streams are basically now clip shows.
Mhm.
Uh, just hit 20 of those now. Um, Other than that, yeah, it's just been work, sleep, eat, work, sleep, eat. Very little time for much of anything else in between, which is why I'm on the verge of burnout this last week, and I'm just sitting here. Oh, work no play makes mad a dull boy.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that's some of the stuff that Alex and I were talking about while you were setting up the stream off call.
Hmm.
That and we got like I believe a pseudo winter storm middle of last week, and we're getting another one right now, and it's gonna instead of all at once in one day, it's gonna spread itself out over 2 days, which is just fantastic. They're still trying to threaten that it's gonna be about a foot, and I'm still sitting here going, but it doesn't hit full blast until like halfway through the morning tomorrow, and it's already decreasing by evening, so I don't know about that.
Right.
In fact, it's going to periodically stop, so big storm.
Hmm.
But we'll see.
The most exciting weather news I've had is we had a couple days of 30, and then we had as warm as I think 77 2 days later.
Good God, you're sweltering over there.
The weather cannot make up its mind, which might be why I've been getting headaches.
Yeah, and that's basically the
Um,
same here. It'll dip to 20s, go back up to 30s, almost hit 40s a day or
mhm,
so, and then dip back into 20s and suddenly have a storm, where it's just when all the snow comes back for no reason, even though it just left.
mhm. Although now that I'm in the real South, there are days that are forecasted to be in the 80s while I'm down here. So I'm not looking forward to that because this isn't like when I visited California and it was 80. It will be humid here. We're on the East Coast. Um, Otherwise, oh, I bought a tablet. I don't know if it was a good idea or not, but I've been more and more feeling like I could use a tablet. Then I finally turned around and I was like, you know what? I have enough money on my credit card. I bought a new tablet, keyboard, 2-year insurance policy. Hopefully, I use it enough that it wasn't a waste of money, but
Right.
it might make it easier
Hmm.
if there's times when I can just leave my laptop home and bring my tablet with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I can use it and actually do some digital art. I've been thinking about that for a while, but I know you need a cheap ass tablet is not going to be useful for making digital art, whereas this one is expensive enough. It definitely is powerful enough to do drawing and stuff on.
Hmm. Fair enough. Try to give it a go.
Right.
Um, I'm well, actually with the help of the tax returns, I am actually at the point where I'm close to where I want to be to try and invest in getting my licenses set back up again and actually get a real driver's license and try and attempt to get at least an affordable vehicle, air quotes. But I want to make sure I hit a certain point yet that's still out of my reach at the moment, and hoping and praying that the checks are decent and my cost of living is low for the next month or two, and maybe I'll get there. That or maybe if people keep also donating to my other shows, maybe that Twitch check will come in again.
Hmm.
Always helps a little bit.
Hmm.
Right. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to mention?
Not that I can think of.
Nothing else off the top of my head. That's about everything for me.
All right. So on tonight's show, we have Doctor Who birthdays and news. We've got a little bit of geek talk, not much, but a couple things. Then we have our episode summary, review, final thoughts, and rating. So we start with Alex with the birthdays.
Okay. On the 10th of February, we had Peter Purves, who played Stephen Taylor in seasons 2 and 3, who turned 84. On the 12th, we have Nabil Shaban, who played Syl in seasons 22 and 23, who turned 70. And also on the 12th, we had Henry Lincoln, who was the writer of 3 Second Doctor stories and the creator of Alistair Lethbridge Stewart. Would have been 93, but died in 2020 at 91. On the 14th of February, we had Simon Pegg, the editor in The Long Game, Doctor Who Confidential narrator, among a bunch of other things, including Montgomery Scott in the newer Star Trek movies. He turned 53. On the 16th, we had Christopher Eccleston, who was the Doctor in Series 1, and again now on Big Finish. Turned 59. Also on the 16th, we have Jeremy Bulloch, played Hal in The Time Warrior, better known as the Boba Fett suit actor, in 1980 to 1983. Would have been 78, but died in 2020 at the age of 75. On the 17th, we have Jack Montgomery, who played a young Jack Harkness in Adam, turned 31. Also on the 17th, we had Philip Latham, who played Barossa in The Five Doctors, would have been 94, but died in 2020 at 91. And on the 20th, we have Anjali Mahindra, who played Rani in Sarah Jane Adventure Series 2 to 5, and Queen Skithra in Night of Terror. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. She turned 33.
Yes, that title was too long for me to type up.
Yeah. And also on the 20th, and finally we have Anthony Stewart Head, who played Mr. Finch in School Reunion, but better known as Rupert Giles in Buffy, turned 69.
Nice.
Nice.
So happy birthday to all of those folks. I would run through names again, but
That's quite the list.
We have a lot of honorary people in here that may or may not have made it for Doctor Who, but made it for other things.
Right.
Right, moving on to news, and I noticed I made a mistake with the links. So I think the first link, I just put a link for Cult Box instead of the appropriate article. But if you scroll down to the link about the festive special.
Yeah, the 60 years here.
Before that, wait, 60 years. Nothing about 60 years. Wait, what?
The Cult Box. That's what I got for the first link here.
Yeah. So is it just the main Cult Box page right now?
No, it's Cult Box. Doctor Who 60 years. Big Finish confirmed. Doctor Who 60th anniversary series guests.
That's the last link.
Unless unless this is a list. Oh, okay, this is a list of articles, so it probably is just the basic front page.
It's the one that says Doctor Who filming with Shudigato at 2 venues in Cardiff is supposed to be the right article. So I guess I read the headline and then I copied and pasted the link without actually clicking on the right article. So that was my bad. But the reason, so the news here is that we have official confirmation that the 2023 Doctor Who festive special is currently being filmed. So I guess they started filming for 2024 before filming the festive special. But as of the 9th on February, there were witnesses who found evidence that there were very Christmassy things being filmed. Of course, it's possible they're filming a year in advance, but the way they do these filming blocks, I don't think so. So this is probably the real first Shudigatwa story. Looking at the photos now, I don't know if there's anything special in the photos other than just confirmation of what I just said.
Other than locations and people in warm clothing, I don't really see anything Christmassy, but okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. But what do they specifically say here? They said the pub was set just for Christmas, so I don't know if they were able to see more of the pub setting or if they were just kind of using, film theory and just under the understanding that these colors are the way you would do it for a Christmas special. Which, yeah, it's definitely red and green and everything.
Mm.
Casting calls for this filming indicated a Christmas party with a band. Okay. So
Okay.
putting that together with the set, that makes sense.
Oh, you know what? Okay, one of the shots of the windows does show some decorations. I had to
Yeah.
find the one shot that's actually in daylight, so you can actually see what was immediately
Oh,
behind the
okay.
glass.
Oh,
It's like the first set of pictures, like right near the top.
okay. I see. You're kind of just like looking through the glass to see what you can see.
Basically, it's a shot of the window from outside, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the sunlight right against it, so you can actually see like the curtains and gold, red, and green decorations between the curtains. Like, oh, there we go. That's the one bit of evidence it's Christmas themed. Okay.
Right. Yeah. That's fair. I
Mm.
guess that's probably a bit more elaborate than normal pub decoration.
Mm. I do love how the windows just have the word brains in there for some reason.
Yep. I
And
just thought it was
apparently that's all in there, so it's not a set decoration thing.
Right.
maybe that's a brand that makes craft beer or something. I don't know.
Mm.
But that's all the news we have for that. Which brings us on to our next bit, which is that this is regarding a range of figurines that were originally produced by Eagle Moss, which they don't directly say here, but I'm guessing from the context that they had gone bankrupt and been liquidated. But now a company called Sci-Fi Collector uh, in the UK, which the original would have been in the UK as well, are also going to be basically relaunching this series of figurines and selling off what was already there. So if you wanted to buy them, then this is your chance. We
Well,
see it was the
this doesn't bode well because so far I've been getting nothing for trying to go to the website. Your connection is not
ah
private. Attackers might.
uh,
Wow, that doesn't bode well.
yeah, this is DoctorWhoNews.net that we're looking at, which is one of our standard sources. So
Mm.
I'll
unless you mean
just
you clicked on the
try.
Sci-Fi Collector website.
Yeah, try going to the collector website to see if there's anything to
Oh,
see there,
okay.
but it keeps getting
Mm.
blocked.
Got you. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm seeing the same
that happened
thing.
to me as well.
Uh,
Keeps getting blocked, and it says there's a possible safety issue going there. So I'm just gonna look up the collector website instead. Sci-fi collector, Doctor Who toys, merchandise, another. Okay. Holy smokes, this is a
so,
jumble.
so I wouldn't necessarily enter your credit card information into that website if you can help it.
Yeah, I
If there's
found
if
I
there's
found a
another way to buy it.
supposedly safe version to go and look at, and it is a jumbled up mess. This doesn't even look like a complete website.
Mm.
They're very rough right now.
Right. Yeah, and it looks
Mm.
like it's probably like an independent, basically a group of people that probably just bought off the old stock and started a company based on it and are reselling it or something like that.
Mm.
But they mentioned there's flux things, including Carvanista. There's a cleaner robot from Paradise Towers. There's Ninth and 10th Doctor's TARDIS consoles, um, things like that. So, if that's something you're interested in, then maybe you could look it up. Although, yeah, the website does not seem to be in the best order at the moment.
Mm. I will say, I feel like they could have picked a better name for themselves because when I read Sci-Fi Collector to sell unsold stock, I think they mean like a person,
Yeah,
not a
I was so
business.
slow. I was like, let me confirm what I'm saying. Like sci-fi collector almost sounds like, well, I'm just planning on selling these at a table at Comic Con, but
Yeah.
I need a
That's
legal
kind of
name for the
interesting. Down at the
business.
bottom, copyright 2023, online since 1998.
Ah, so that's why the website is not very great.
You've been
They learned
around a
how to
while.
make a
You'd think you would have done some updates, my
yeah.
lad.
They learned how to make a GeoCities page in '98, and they have not
This is the
upgraded their web
result.
design since.
Yeah.
Lordy.
All right, now that we've roasted their website,
I'm sorry, but it deserves roasting, especially when you try
our
to direct link it and it doesn't work.
our
Mm.
next bit of news is Candy Jar Books, and we don't cover everything they come out with anymore because it's getting a lot of it is less and less related to Doctor Who, as series evolve and they become more,
Mm.
marketable. But this is
Right.
very specifically stories about Unit. This is the second short story collection about Unit that they have or that they will be releasing. This is Operation Fallout and Other Stories. There's a huge interview here, and I'm not planning on reading the whole thing. Do they have a release date? It's available to pre-order from the Candy Jar Books website, as the Candy Jar Books ones always are.
Hmm.
Um, I don't see the release date.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know
available
if
to
they
pre-order.
have the release date, but
Released during the second half of 2023,
okay,
sometime July or later.
right.
They don't have a definite
And,
month yet.
and yeah, they did have a whole bunch of information on here on Doctor Who news, but most of it's not of huge interest to us, so I'm not going to go over it. But that's there for those who are interested.
Okie doke.
Which moves us on to our last chunk of news, which is Big Finish. Um, First off, we have the new releases. On February 14th, was Torchwood, the last love song of Susie Costello, written by Rafaela Marcus and starring Indira Varma as Susie. Then we have the First Doctor Adventures, The Demon Song, which was released on February 16, written by Bob Ayers and Nicholas Briggs. It was two-part stories, starring Stephen Noonan as the First Doctor and Lauren Cornelius as Dodo. And then on the 21st, so today, as of the time we started recording this, at least in the US, Doctor Chronicles, the 11th Doctor, All of Time and Space. So I believe Doctor Chronicles are the ones that are slightly more of an audiobook style format, or at least making clear that the live actors are not returning,
Mm.
because it's Jacob Dudman as the 11th Doctor, and there are 4 stories, each with their own writer. In
Okay.
addition to the new releases, we also have a big bit of Big Finish news, which is they've announced some information about their 60th anniversary special by the name of Once and Future. So it's going to be starring. Well, first off, I think it says how many stories there are. Where maybe I thought that was here, but I'm not seeing it at the moment. I think it was 8 story. Oh, there we go. Epic 8-part story. Featuring Stephen Noonan as the first Doctor, Michael Troughton as the second Doctor, Tim Treloar as the third Doctor, um, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, Paul McGann, Christopher Eccleston, and David Tennant as their own Doctors, and the final performance of David Warner as the Unbound Doctor, which probably means that this is the story that Christopher Eccleston and David Warner recorded together, and that their doctors are going to be interacting.
Mm.
We don't know about any surviving companions. If any of them are returning, they haven't been announced. But what we do have is a list of guests here, which is Michelle Gomez as Missy, Nicola Walker as Liv Chenka, the Eighth Doctor's audio companion, Georgia Tennant as Jenny, the Doctor's daughter, Michelle Ryan as Lady Christina D'Souza, Camille Coduri as Jackie Tyler, Nev McIntosh as Madame Vastra, along with Katrin Stewart as Jenny Flint and Dan Starkey as Strax. We have Sadie Miller, Elizabeth Sladen's daughter, as Sarah Jane Smith. Christopher Naylor as Harry Sullivan. Ken Bones as the General, which it's presented as a returning character, but it's a vague enough name that I'm not placing it. And Beth Chalmers as Veclin. So some of these are Big Finish characters, others are recasts or in characters on screen who. And again, five companions from on screen who they are not announced yet.
Okay, you went a little robotic for a moment, but I think we got the gist of that.
Okay, did you miss a lot or?
No, just a couple seconds there.
Okay. And yeah, there's 8 stories. It looks they each have their own titles, so it's not a part 1, part 2, part 3 thing. The weird thing about this announcement is that the first 7 parts are made to October of 2023, and then the final part is released in November 2024, which you would think that would be a typo, but if so, it's been like a week and they haven't corrected it.
Weird and interesting, yeah.
There might be a year between part 7 and part 8. Not entirely sure how to feel about that if that's true.
Yeah, it's an eyebrow raiser either way.
Either way, this looks like it's going to be a pretty big event, and I hope the stories are good and they're not just, they're not too crowded to tell stories, that they came up with stories and then get cast rather than the other way around.
Right. And usually, to be fair, Big Finish has usually not had that much of an issue with that, so far at least.
Most of the time, right?
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. But usually they're pretty solid.
So we've got 11 doctors in 8 episodes. I imagine there's 7 of them that are original on
Oh, here he goes again.
screen.
Pardon Bill's connection, folks. He is trapped in a hotel right now.
They clearly now or still messed up?
Oh, there you go. You're back again.
Now.
You just came back.
Okay, has my connection been stable enough that I can talk about Harley Quinn without a problem?
Well, you better go do it right now, otherwise he'll probably duck out on us again.
All right. So first thing of Geek Talk, I managed to watch the Harley Quinn Valentine's Day special. It's a double part episode, focusing on the characters of Harley Quinn. And this being a comedy, I hope you don't mind if I include some plot items just so you can understand how batshit insane this is. I'm not going to say how the series of events happens, but it does involve Bane growing to kaiju size and fucking skyscrapers to death. If that doesn't tell you whether you want to watch this or not, then I don't know what will. It's Harley Quinn. It's even though it's a special, just like with the regular episodes, they managed to both combine the hilarity of the actual comedy show with like actually looking at the trauma of Harley Quinn and of Poison Ivy and how that affects their relationship. So you've got a little bit of the serious and a whole lot of the funny. And yeah, otherwise, if you've been enjoying Harley Quinn, especially season 3, then this will just be probably one of your favorite episodes. That's it.
All right, and then moving right along.
I kind of thought that one plot item would get more audible reactions, but
I believe you mentioned earlier, so it's not as much of an effect.
Oh yeah, I mentioned it in our group chat, but nobody responded there either, so I thought maybe you didn't read it.
Okay. So, Titfield Thunderbolt?
Yep. I've been meaning to watch this movie for a while, because seen it recommended by a channel I'm watching that. And my interest in trains had been kicked into overdrive again recently, so I was like, hey, why not? They have it on YouTube to rent for cheap, so I'll do that. And for a movie from 1953, this holds up surprisingly well.
Okay.
Like it's inspired by like an actual railway getting saved and like preserved. Like it's inspired by the first preserved railway. I don't know if they necessarily take much like actual events and fictionalize them, or if it's just like, hey, that's a neat idea, let's do a movie of that. I mean, the gauge is definitely different, as far as the track goes. But yeah, like it's like, this little town or village trying to like save a branch line that is otherwise going to be closed by British Rail. And their sort of quest to make it work, even though pretty much none of them have ever run a railway before. um, and yeah, it's just like there are some. Honestly, it's funny because there are some jokes that I didn't think would get a laugh out of me because it's just so. Oh, well, that's very basic and quaint, but or like just bits of comedy otherwise that actually got a laugh out of me that I just wasn't expecting to. And I was like, oh, well, that's a pleasant surprise. Um, and hell, you have a bit where a steam engine takes on a steamroller, so which
Okay.
is actually quite interesting. I mean, it's kind of played for comedy, but it's just to see that happen is very like, because I had that kind of spoiled for me in far as like that it happens, but hadn't seen clips of it before. So watching that was actually like, oh, okay, they actually do have a tank engine charge at a fucking steamroller. That's kind of amazing, especially because it's both are real. These aren't models running into each other.
Right.
I mean, they use models at certain points because otherwise, and you kind of have to like let it slide that like, well, in reality, this would not be what happens. But you just kind of have to let it slide because this is a movie made in the 50s that would probably have had a very small budget, so I wouldn't have been able to
Comparatively,
pull that
yes.
off. Yeah. Um but yeah, like honestly, if people have even like the vaguest interest in railway movies, I would say give this a shot. Honestly, just it's a fun movie anyway. Like I did not, given that it's a movie from the 50s, I was like, I don't know, maybe some of the humor will be very of the time and not even like off color, but just like very like standard
Oh,
50s humor that might not necessarily be funny anymore because it's like, oh, that old chestnut, this like jerk that's been dragged through the dirt at this point
well,
kind of stuff.
to be honest and fair, real comedy, real decently done comedy, still stands the test of time. I mean, look
Hmm.
at the Three Stooges. They've tried making those into modern movies. They suck. But if you go back and actually
Yeah.
watch the Three Stooges, those guys are freaking hilarious.
Hmm.
Especially if shtick is slapstick like that is your one of your go-tos. They're still on the ball. There's been nobody better than
Hmm.
them.
Yeah, slapstick doesn't really age.
Hmm. Um. But yeah, just honestly, I enjoyed the movie way more than I thought I was going to. So yeah, like definite recommend for me. Again, like cheap on YouTube, it only would cost a couple of bucks. I mean, it cost me like maybe $4 to rent it in HD, so it'd probably be even cheaper in US money. So yeah, I definitely think it's worth a watch.
Alrighty. So with that, I guess it's down to the episode for tonight.
Yep. And I'll load up my stopwatch. Okay. So tell me when you're ready for a countdown.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's colored as me again, but that's okay. We talked about it in chat.
Yep.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, we basically start the episode off with Sarah Jane in mourning. Her aunt has finally just recently passed away, according to the start of this episode. Someone that proclaims to be part of the village stops by for a brief moment to talk to her and then continues on. But once they get out of sight and indoors somewhere, they talk to someone else about having to go back to London as they have plans for her that they'll enact very soon. Fast forward about I believe a year later. Apparently, a show that Sarah Jane was doing to undermine a particular business and its illegal doings has suddenly backfired on her. The channel has dropped her, but she is still in touch with one of the people that are at the channel, and they have been helping her get funds to continue her investigations because she still firmly believes that what's going on is highly illegal and possibly very dangerous. More so than even the stuff that she had originally uncovered as she continues to try and investigate. She then fakes herself to be a teacher who's looking to get out of the teaching business and becomes basically a bank teller. And in the middle of her shift one day, about a week in, she is suddenly being held at gunpoint. Thanks to a brave young man who was in the lines, she is saved from being shot. And upon the thieves trying to make their escape, they are stopped by the police just outside and hauled off. However, they believe the one young man to be part of the thief group, though Sarah Jane has to put her foot down and immediately gets involved, and is accidentally outed by one of the officers when they take a closer look at her. She still goes in to help save the young man from being arrested for a crime he did not commit, but is then forced to make contact with her partner inside the TV studio to once again change identities, move to a different location, and continue to be undercover as much as she possibly can to try and make her next move, which will have to be some other means because the bank is probably going to be off to her. Come to find out, the young man shows up at her new apartment, or actually no, she was still at the old apartment, and it turns out not only did he basically knows information really quickly when no one was looking while at the police station, but it turns out he is also apparently a friend of Sarah's. He is a friend of one of Sarah's friends, who is I keep forgetting the term, but they're basically an activist group that tries to stop pollution, deforestation, etc. And long story short, he gets involved with her. They make an attempt at the bank owner because they found out as they were trying to get stuff monitored that there was a lot of weird stuff going on, and the bank has suddenly lost a ton of money. They go to have a quick interview with the man, and he turns out to be dead, shot in the heart and in the face, but with a piece of information left in his hand. Sarah Jane follows this information out to an abandoned, or not abandoned, a very small village, and they meet the activist friend on the way there. They start trying to get information, as well as the fact that apparently whatever's going on in this town, there's a certain lack of activities. Sarah also notices that there's a certain lack of age groups, and they also notice that there's a certain growing number of basically shallow graves not too far outside of town that the activists have been finding, which is what they've been keeping hush-hush, but they're still continuing with their plans on basically saying that the company that's involved with the village has been causing some sort of chemical spills, which is getting issues with the forest. all this comes down to the fact that Sarah still has to go in there. She realizes this is probably still some sort of setup or trap. Makes contact with the... I keep forgetting what they call him now. The guy who's basically helping to run the village.
The squire.
The squire. She makes contact with the squire, who literally popped out of nowhere a couple of years back, and has been doing something that has been both helping the village, but also apparently been blackmailing it, because nobody there wants to talk to out-towners as much as they possibly can help it. The squire then decides now is the time to act, basically because we find out in secret that he is also involved with the company that's also involved with the bank that caused all this stuff to be going down right now, and might be involved with the people who undermined her about a year ago. The squire takes her out to a well nearby. The well supposedly was a place of power many moons back, but it became the venting installation for a factory back in the 80s, and the reason why the town hasn't had a population of younger people, especially children, is because everyone, due to the chemicals that were spilt at the plant, has become sterile. So what this new company has been doing is they've been taking the old plant and doing DNA testing and been trying to clone the town so they could be themselves again and also no longer be sterile. Well, that's apparently not worked out, but what has worked out is an accidental DNA mutation, which has become basically an enormous creature that's living inside the well. As this is all being revealed and the squire is about to push the Sarah Jane into the well, our new young male companion shows up and goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, I mentioned earlier that my old thing was setting houses on fire." Kaboom! There goes the factory. The factory then vents all the fire and smoke through the pipes into the well, burns the creature, and burns the squire as he's having a freak out on the surface. It turns out that as we listen in on another conversation, that the local religious head is also in with the company, even though he never revealed himself to the squire. But he is planning to just basically quietly retire for now and just watch over the village. And Sarah Jane basically starts to move on her way, and that's about it for the story.
All right. Yep, so I'm seeing 6 minutes and just under 50 seconds.
I would also add that this is an hour and 10 minutes?
Something like that.
I think like hour 15 maybe.
But something along those lines. So it's not impossible for this to kind of run long, because there's a lot of stuff that are trying to cover all in one episode.
I'll admit I was really surprised when you were 2 minutes in and you were still talking about the bank.
Because there's a lot you gotta cover just before you even reach the bank. Believe me, I'm trying to get through that as fast as possible, and then it's just like, okay, and I need to cut more. I need to cut more as I keep going. Main highlights.
Kind of a side note on this. It was really difficult for me to find photos of the cast that were actually representative of the characters, because the character only plays a small cameo. I keep forgetting the character's name, but she's a wheelchair user in the audio. And one, I don't think the actor is a wheelchair user, and two, the actor is Sadie Miller, Elisabeth Sladen's daughter. So almost all of the photos of any of the cast members have her in them, and I'm like, she's barely in the episode. I can't just have her like hug, prominently in photos on the title card. It'll be weird. Meanwhile, the actress who played Ellie, I couldn't even find a regular photo of her. I could only find the ones that they were using for like autographs and stuff. But that's the perils of working with audio dramas.
Yeah, trying to find anything outside the given pictures that they make for the audio is very hard, unless they happen to be getting adapted somewhere else.
Yeah. And this was early days of Big Finish, so they didn't take as many behind-the-scenes photos as nowadays.
That too.
All right, so we start with what we liked about the episode, and according to my coin flip, we get the same order as last time. So we start with Matt.
All right. General thing I liked about the story. Outside of the I want to say maybe the last 10, 15 minutes, this is actually a really nice, really well paced story.
Hmm.
It just feels like that last bit was rushed because they felt the need to tag something on to kind of end it with. But the rest of it was actually a really interesting story that seemed to develop quite nicely throughout the rest of the time span that it ran for.
I'll agree. I never really felt like it was dragging or anything.
Yeah, you're getting the information you needed, and they were feeding it the right amount. It's just that I'll get into it later, but yeah, that's just that last little bit. But the rest of it was really, really strong and good, really well written stuff, and it was very well paced.
Hmm.
All right, Alex.
I'm gonna say the soundtrack
Mm,
because
yeah.
it was just
Okay.
the music in this was like it kind of caught me off guard because I was like, okay, unusual choice of music for a Doctor Who adjacent thing, but
Well,
and it's funny because at first I was like, what does this sound like? And then I'm like, oh, this sounds like we're in the 70s, which I guess fits because that is where she debuted, even though this wouldn't be set in
well,
the
yeah, it
70s.
wouldn't be set in the 70s because
Mhm.
they did have smartphones, I believe, or at least cell phones of some
Mm.
kind.
They had cell phones. Came out in 2002. I don't know about smartphones.
Mm.
I think they were just starting, but they hadn't become huge yet. I know the iPhone was out by
They,
then.
they might have called
Mm.
them sidekick and not cell phones if they had the most
But yeah,
advanced
most
ones
likely these were cell
or
phones.
Blackberries.
Mm. Yeah, it was just
Which
like,
so go ahead.
yeah, it was just like, it was an interesting choice to not go with. I guess it's also just a funny contrast, like compared to Sarah Jane Adventures, where I'm used to them using more modern Who style music cues,
Mm,
and this just going, well, she debuted in the 70s, so we'll go with something that sounds like
It kind
right.
of reminded me of a touch of
a
Doctor Who
70s
music,
soundtrack.
maybe a little further on from the 70s, but it also kind of reminded me of hints of maybe spy shows from the 70s and 80s.
Or like
Kind of a
certain detective shows
yeah,
or something.
kind of almost like a Doctor Who meets Mission Impossible kind of deal.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, this was made for Tom Baker fans and maybe John Pertwee fans, whereas Sarah Jane Adventures was, if anything, made for new fans or David Tennant fans.
Mm.
But talking about the cell phones, I was originally going to be super critical of Sarah Jane in this, and I was like, wait, this was probably before cell phones actually had GPS and Google Maps and everything.
Yeah,
So maybe
Mm.
maybe her use of cell phones is a little more reasonable than it would have been if this came out nowadays.
yeah. The smart.
Mm.
I don't think GPS on phones was really that much of a thing until at least the mid 2000s or
Mhm.
later.
Not until, at the very least, the iPhones became popular.
Yeah, not until
Mm.
the smartphones completely took off. Then I
Hmm.
think the last couple generations of cell phones had them too.
Hmm. All right. So moving on to what I liked. I liked the how detailed the character backgrounds were. Like I almost wanted to be go back and listen to a story with, Ellie and Sarah, but all of the characters, except of course for Sarah Jane and her dead aunt, were created for this story. But
Mm.
if you listen to it and you didn't know better, you could be like, oh, these must have been novel characters because they have so much of a relationship with Sarah Jane. They talk about these adventures they've gone on and their existing relationships, really in depth and really well developed for characters that were just created for for this audio drama and for its sequels that had never really existed before.
Yeah, you can tell they decided to take some time to make sure that they were fleshed out before they get started.
Even from what I could find looking it up, apparently Ellie was even a rewrite because they were going to take an eighth Doctor, a companion from the novels, and have her make a cameo, but instead they changed it because of the plot or whatever, and made a whole new character. So that even just goes to show they put even more effort into developing this character than a rush job might have expected if it was a last minute edit.
Right?
Mm.
No, it doesn't match with this character. Let's go completely rewrite this character to somebody else.
Right. Or I don't know, rush or last minute. I know it was, either way, it was not the first draft.
Right.
I don't know how long they had to make it, but either way, the point still stands. All right, what we disliked about the story, and starting again with Matt. Hopefully, nobody takes mine.
Disliked about the story. I'm gonna have to go back to where I was with the last one. I really liked a lot of the pacing and everything in this story, but that last 15 minutes, where did this suddenly turn into Monster of the Week? Last second, just so we could have a threat and then have the bad guy killed.
They hinted at it a bit, but yeah, you don't really see
they hinted at it a little bit, but
it.
it very much is last second forced drama. Very, very last second forced danger, and then we have a very, very equally as quick sudden end to the danger.
It was literally Sarah Jane shows up, starts talking to the bad guy. He's like, "All right, well, I'm gonna try and feed you to the monster now. Let's go."
That's cool because you're curious and questioning things.
Which,
by the way, here's the well. The monster's in there. I'm gonna push you. I'm gonna push you.
Which I kind of think it works for a story of this length, but I definitely think once he starts talking about going to the well, I feel it feels like there's at least a half hour more of content than there actually is. But it would have been a structure, it would have been a longer story if they did it that way.
Yeah, there's they skipped a lot of stuff to get that point all of a sudden. Literally the I keep forgetting the new guy that's with her most of the story.
Josh, I believe. Yes, Josh.
Josh? Yeah, you don't even know where he's at for for a couple of minutes before her last big scene that pushes her into this goes off. You just know that a couple of people are trying to find out information, and Josh is his phone off again. And I mean, I understand having your phone off when you're sneaking somewhere or when you're in a place like a classroom or something, but stop turning it off when you're just out and walking, you dolt.
I'll have more to say in a second. All right.
But yeah, right. Just that last little bit in particular is just that's moving at breakneck speed. We did not schedule enough time for this bit.
Okay, Alex.
I'm probably treading on Matt's a bit anyway, but yeah, the fact that I was honestly kind of enjoying it, that it seemed very, so at least maybe for this introductory story, because we haven't set up necessarily Sarah Jane having any tech gifted from the Doctor or repurposed or whatever, that we're probably going to avoid for now sort of supernaturally or alien stuff. And then we end up with that at the end anyway.
Then we just end up with a biological monster at the end. It's like, what?
Oh, although it's interesting because they give it a completely scientific or pseudo-scientific origin, and then the Squire goes off and he's like, well, it's this power because of the devil and the well, and I don't know if he's just off his rocker or if he's if he's actually implying that that's how the creature got its psychic powers.
I'm pretty sure it's literally just him off his bloody rocker, and he's gonna try and push people in to get killed.
Mhm.
And I guarantee you, unlike what he seems to think he has control over the creature, I guarantee you he doesn't have nearly the amount of control he thinks he does. He was going to get killed by it eventually anyway.
Mhm.
But instead, both the creature and himself get killed in the fire.
I think in a lot of Doctor Who stories, yeah, you would have had the monster eat him, and then they have to get rid of the monster. Wait, so what was your dislike that they did go with the sci-fi angle, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, his dislike was that it could have been just a simple setup story, and instead they had
Got
to
you.
last second throw in a sci-fi element.
Okay. Yeah. So mine, I did not like Josh. Especially, I mean, I didn't mind him so much when I was just trying to grasp the plot the first time I listened through. But when I kind of understood what was going on and I listened to it a second time, he complains about everything. He hates phones, he hates cities, he hates uh the country, he hates animals, he hates people. He hates people. I think, yeah, he hates people that don't like the cops. But I think he also hates the cops. And
This young lad seems to have an issue with everything. How about he
right.
goes home and thinks his life through a little bit more and then comes back when he has a sound decision of what he wants in life?
It's like, but by the time we got to Ellie, I was just, Josh, shut up, please. Stop talking. You're getting on my nerves every time you speak.
Just go back to the crapper and never come back.
I feel like that
It's
didn't bug
especially-
me as much, but I think that's just because I probably just subconsciously figure, oh, he'll get better. Probably.
Yeah, I don't think
Sort
he
of a
overly annoyed me, but I can definitely see
stereotype.
where he can get on your nerves. He's very much like Luke Skywalker Episode 4 whiny.
Right. It was like
At least for the
time
first half of
listening
the
to
movie.
it. The first time listening to it, like a lot of it just like I didn't even notice because I was trying, so like even like the fact that like they go to the computer cafe and he immediately starts complaining, oh, why do they have to use computers while they're drinking their coffee? Like I didn't even notice that at
The
first
worst thing
because
good
it's a
coffee.
minor detail. But then I was like, why is this something you need to be complaining about? And of course the phone thing is like every time someone's trying to contact him, his phone
Why
is
do
off.
you even have a phone? Smack him with it over the head.
All right, favorite scene, Matt.
Favorite scene? Um, honestly, I'm gonna go with I'm trying to remember. I think they were coming back from trying to talk to the what's his face, the bank owner, and then they come back out to see
Nick
someone
Briggs.
suddenly messing with the car. It's like, wait, what is that person? Boom, and just Sarah Jane's just like, ah, oh, dang it, that was my favorite car so far. Oh well, I guess. Moving on.
Mm.
Badass
But,
reporters don't look at explosions.
yeah, but what about your car? Welcome to my life.
On to my life. Shit happens. Let's move on.
Okay, Alex.
Honestly, I'm gonna go with the opening. Just
The
because it's
funeral
like,
or like the actual
yeah,
opening?
like
Or not even a funeral. It's she's just like sitting by
yeah,
the graveside on her own, I think.
yeah. It's like, yeah, seemingly like the funeral's just ended and everyone's leaving and she's staying behind. Um, I feel like it didn't hit me as much as I thought it might, but it's like she's still definitely acting her ass off for that. And especially because I don't even really remember if they do much, like, or let her have a moment like this in the Sarah Jane Adventures, which, yeah, I get it's aimed at a younger audience, but they've had emotional moments in that show.
Mm-hmm.
So letting her have this moment
Of course, now
to, like,
she's the
take that
doctor in the
in.
other show.
Um, but yeah, it was nice to get that moment in.
Okay.
So,
So
Will,
what is my favorite scene? Yep. And I guess I'm going to go. I'm not entirely sure if I can put my finger on why, but I think like Sarah Jane with Ellie and Maud in the protesters camp, and they're just like establishing like they're just kind of professionals talking about what they do and getting shit done, and preparing for what needs to go next. And I think it's partially, I think it has a lot to do with what I talked about before about like how fleshed out characters are. There's really nothing I can describe about this scene about like why I like it, but it's just it kind of it's just like it's just a demonstration of the overall competence of the characters and of the story, if that makes sense. It's like the middle of a web almost in that way, like the artistry of it.
mm-hmm.
Again, nothing I can really describe in a way that really makes any sense, but yeah. All right. Least favorite scenes. I'm think I can guess this, or he'll surprise us.
Let's see. The least favorite scene. Trying to think which one do I want to go with. There's a couple little moments where it's like, really? You know what? I'll go with Josh whinging as they go down the path out in the woods. It's cold. Why is there so much
not
fresh
the ending yet,
air?
okay?
Why am I breathing?
Yeah.
I hate nature. It stinks.
What happens if we're
Why are we going
starring
to
in
a
Back House on
village?
the
I
Left?
hate small villages. It's like that was one of the few moments where I'm like, Lordy, this boy.
Yes.
I gotta go to the bathroom. It's around my bush, child.
Which I was gonna say, you've been surrounded by trees all this time, and your first thing is like, what about a bathroom?
Go. You see that bush over there? You go on over there. Just have a nice squat. It's right next to a
And
maple
then
tree. You got big leaves on that sucker.
and then he complains about the bathroom because he just can't be satisfied.
Nope.
There
Bathroom
could have
smells
been
of
a
poo
bump.
gas.
Well, it would have been a copyright bump if I played I can't satisfaction.
You can't no do 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 do.
All right, Alex.
I'm gonna go with like Josh being the one to be like, well, I'm clearly gonna go with you to this meeting because there's clearly gonna be something up, and Sarah Jane being the one to be like, oh, no, it's gonna be fine. I'm like, what? Why would Sarah Jane not like think that something's up? When like I think earlier and after the fact, there's moments where it comes up like, oh, you know me, I get called paranoid all the time just because I'm cautious. So it's like it's weird that she's not overly cautious about the meeting, but
Yeah,
Josh is. That feels kind of out of character for Sarah Jane to be so flippant about like, oh, it's fine. What's he gonna
right.
do? And it's like.
Like it's not like she has K9 who's just going to be, oh yeah, do his whistle, and K9 will break through the wall and protect her. But that's kind of how
Although I do have to wonder where K9 is at this point.
she's acting, and that's Well, he was broken at the start of school.
Oh, maybe it is power
Mm,
down or something. Yeah.
mm,
But yeah, considering all that she's been through, like, I'm a little surprised they didn't frame her for murder because it would have been so easy to do
mm,
so.
yeah.
And it never even crosses her mind that that's a possibility.
Mm. Or just the fact that like she doesn't assume, especially because even like there's the later bit where she's like, "Well, I know this is a trap, but I'm gonna go spring it anyway." And that like you would think that this would be another moment like that where it's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, clearly something's gonna happen, but I
Mhm.
feel like I still have to do this anyway. Unless they just
Right.
figured like, well, if we have two moments like that, the dialogue might get a bit repetitive.
Hmm.
But it was still a bit like I feel like she should have been a bit more cautious. Even if she was just like, "Oh, don't
Yeah.
worry," and like pulls out, I don't know, a stun gun or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
It'd be one
Or
thing if
mace or
they,
whatever.
even later on in the story, if they were like, oh yeah, if later on in the stories they were like, oh yeah, she's super confident because she has sonic lipstick, or she has an
Hmm.
EMP, or literally anything that would have gotten her out
Yeah.
of that situation that we didn't know about, but that never
Hmm.
happens.
Yeah.
Nope.
Because
For
it's
a
like,
reason,
yeah.
the mustache twirling villains just left a note in the guy's hand and went bye.
Because like, yeah, it's like I get her not thinking that the guy she's going to talk to is a threat, but like she knows that he's clearly working for other people who aren't gonna be as, easily talked into revealing shit. So it's
Right.
so bizarre that she's so like
Yeah.
nonchalant about all that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would Lois do in this situation? Oh, she'd be super confident because Lois Lane knows that Superman will show up. She screams. All right, so my least fiend, and I can't find the name of the girl they were talking about, but after they had the whole thing, they were like, "Oh, are you sure you're not worried about this girl is dead or whatever?" And then Josh and Sarah Jane are just talking, and it's almost like they're mocking the girl. They're like, "Well, we know what she didn't. We know that there's bad guys here that have been trying to fuck over my life, and
We'll be a
we're
little more
going
prepared for what's going to happen because they might have done
to
something to
survive
her.
because we're so much." Yeah, like the scene comes off as they were just like, "Yeah, well, she died because she was stupid, and we're better than her." And like they went from seeming concerned with Mud to not even sounding like they care. They're like, "Well, so what if she died? We're not gonna die." And it's like, dude, what? It's way too early in the series to be this jaded.
Mm.
So I
All
guess
right.
that's our thoughts of our thoughts,
Final
and
thought.
as Bill slowly loses connection again, final thoughts, I believe. So, final thoughts. I think this is a really good story. It's a lot of it's really well acted. Even the plot, even though there's a very big last minute rush to get certain things done, at least there's stuff that tied together properly at the end there, and they still left enough things open for where the stories are hopefully going to go into in the upcoming bits. So yeah, honestly, it wasn't that bad of a sit through. It just feels like the last little bit was a bit rushed, but otherwise, the rest of it was really well done. And that's my
Okay.
Um.
thoughts. So, Alex?
So,
Yep.
all
Yep.
right.
Uh. It's kind of interesting because this was after seeing so much of Sarah Jane Adventures and like finally seeing Time Warrior and stuff like that. it's interesting that this like almost kind of dips into a Torchwood tone is
Kind of
kind of what it felt like to a point.
a lighter
I mean, like
version of it,
a
but yeah.
bear, yeah, like a bearable Torchwood tone. um, I mean, it was still like a little jarring to be like Sarah Jane in this kind of a tone story. That's a bit odd, but at the same time, by virtue of it being her and like literally no other returning characters, it fits. As it is funny though, because I almost wondered at one point if they almost considered having a reference to Joe Grant in here somewhere. Like not necessarily her like showing up, because that would have been way too early to pull something like that. But just with all the protesting
Yeah,
side
the
plot,
protest
it's
group, I
like,
was kind of half thinking that was where they're going
Mhm.
to it too, but it's like, no mention of Joe. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for one thing, she would have had to have been way more active, and this story probably would have had to have been longer because she would have been showing up so late, unless it was like a running
Mhm.
side thing the whole way through. Um, but yeah, I will say I do think Maud was kind of oddly written, and that was something that I almost went with for least favorite aspect overall, because like it almost seemed like the way they were writing her, of her just kind of shrugging off the disappearances, was going to turn out that she was in on the scheme, and then it's like no, she's just you know a very radical protester,
Yeah.
very single-minded, of like, oh well, it's for the cause, um, sort of thing. So I was like, oh, okay, just like and maybe it's just because some of the directing for the acting just made it seem like she was coming off a bit dodgy, rather than just, oh no, she's just being kind of shitty. um, but yeah, aside from that, like it definitely could have been worse, and it is one of those things where I almost wonder if this should have been two parts, not like two parts of the exact same length, but if like part of this story was the start of a second part that went a bit longer, so it got a bit more time.
Right.
Um, like some of the shorter Doctor Who Big Finish stuff. Um, but I don't know, just something about it was funny because like it got to a certain bit, and I was like, how are we gonna wrap this up? This feels like this is mostly over, and we haven't got to the. It almost somehow feels like we still haven't got to the main plot yet.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to a main plot conclusion area. All of a sudden, they race through it.
So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well,
Maybe
that's
it's
that's what we. Oh, I'll let you finish.
like I don't know if this was the first audio story Terrence Dix ever wrote. So maybe it was a bit of that, him just not being used to the format. Or even, hell, for all we know, this may have been longer and was trimmed down.
Maybe.
Because they didn't want it to be overly long, or like they maybe thought it would be a bit boring because a lot of it's just talking and traveling. But I guess we'll never know necessarily. But it felt like it either could
This
have
is his
been
first standard, like normal audio, or his only like stage plays, which I think are a little bit
Usually a
different.
little bit longer, yeah.
And he did a
yeah.
Campaign Chronicles, but this is his only. This is his only regular audio story.
Well, yeah, that could arguably influence that somewhat, because
Yeah.
he'd written novel adaptations of stuff, and obviously stuff for TV, but it's obviously a big difference between that and writing for audio. Um like, yeah, again, it could have been a lot worse potentially, and it is interesting, and we'll see where it goes from here. But it is just kind of like, it's one of those things of I don't know whether I feel like this needed more time or to have a little bit of time shaved off and maybe some restructuring or something like that. But again, for a first story, I think it's at least good. It just doesn't hit that next step up into being great.
So, Bill?
All right. Yep. First of all, that's right. You heard me last time I spoke. So it's I think it's very solid for what it's doing. That come with a pilot. Basically, the way I see it is the main plot. If you look at the pilot, is this is when Sarah met Josh, and everything else is technically. But of course, the part is actually, what is going on with the Squire and the creature and everything. Which, by the way, this episode confused me at first because I only knew of a Squire as, a knight's personal assistant. I didn't know about the other definition until I looked it up after listening to this. But yeah, in general, I enjoyed the story. The new characters are super fleshed out. Even Josh, who's again kind of getting on my nerves, there's enough to him that they can build for sure, and hopefully he has a good some character growth. Sarah Jane herself, I think there were a few moments where she had to take just to get the plot moving, which are things that we kind of discussed a few times.
Yeah.
And one scene that we didn't, but I don't need to dwell on it because it's related to other things we talked about. So it definitely is not like super perfect. But I liked it. If we had gotten, I don't know how successful it was on TV, because they would have had a hard time differentiating itself. It's not really targeted toward kids, and I don't know if it would have been more successful than something like Torchwood. But it's at least enjoyable in this format.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious. The other stories are the same length, which might have double length. Going to be pretty close to a perfect score, but definitely not a perfect score. And that's my thoughts.
Alrighty.
Time for ratings, and hopefully this time the rating sheet opens for me and doesn't stall out the Wi-Fi.
Oh boy.
Okay. Matt, what's your
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure you were saying what you were saying there for a moment. You kind of half cut off.
Oh, okay.
So score.
Yep.
I guess I'm gonna give this a 4. It's just there's a little bit towards the end there that I'm just like, ugh, you erased that a little too hard. You need to give that more time one way or another. But yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, I was almost gonna give it a bit lower, but yeah, I'm gonna agree with Matt and give it a 4.
4.0. So this. All right. So I think I'm going to do something that seems to be very unusual for me. It might be more common for audio dramas. I think I'm going to be the high one.
Oh.
Thinking of 4.5. So one 4.5 and two 4.0s.
I was
averaging
arguing
out
between
to
the
a
two, but I decided on 4.0. Just enough.
4.7. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm averaging out at number 162 out of 444 things reviewed. It is on par with Big Finish Destiny of the Doctor Shockwave. And that's it as far as Big Finish itself, although it's also with Class Night Visiting. It is better than Susan's War Part 3 Assets of War. And the Chaos Pool and Sixth Doctor Last Adventure, The Brink of Death. And it is not as good as 10th Doctor Adventures, Death and the Queen, Sixth Doctor, The Last Adventures, The End of the Line, Sarah Jane Adventure Warriors of the Kudlak. All right, so that is our final thoughts on. Let us know in the comments what you this week's story if you've listened to it. Don't forget to like the video if you've managed to listen this far, and subscribe on YouTube to get our exports of every episode, or follow us on Twitch to get notified every time we stream. Next week, we continue with the Sarah Jane Smith audio story series with The Dow Connection, written by Barry Letts and starring Elisabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith. See you then.
Alrighty. And also, hopefully, Bill's connection will be a little bit better. See you all next time.
I will be back in Ohio, yes.